A knock at the door. Well, doors, obviously. Portals in both the mundane and the magical sense. Thresholds, literal and metaphorical. Transitions moving from one state to another. Every journey begins by passing through a door, so travel and, by extension, trade. All that from 4 little stars. The orc merchant looked skeptical. Makima used all her will not to sigh and roll her eyes. The size of the star doesn't... Can you just trust me on this? We need to perform the ritual inside your office, and during it you need to move through its door. That's all you need to do. We'll do everything else. It just doesn't make sense. I mean, for a start, what about closed doors? Doesn't it mean stars are like to shut me out of the rooms where I want deals to be inside of happen? How do these tiny lights know what I want? They're not small, Meister. They are far. Please, can you just... I don't come down to your office and tell you how to get your ships loaded up, or how to pick a port to trade at, or... You see what I mean? I do, but I like to understand what I'm buying. I didn't get where I am today by accepting things at face value, especially when they don't make a lick of sense. So explain to me again, why only 4 lamps? If 4 lamps are good for guarding my ships to Sarkofan, wouldn't 8 lamps mean the magic was even twice as good? Let's start again. Maybe a metaphor would help? You see, the door is like a key. As soon as she said it, she knew she'd made a mistake, as the merchant opened his mouth to immediately disagree with her. As her temper started to fray, Makima briefly heard the echo of Shiendur whispering that her best course would be to have the merchant thrown out onto the street, because there would always be more traders desperate for the profits her magic could provide. Perhaps have him beating as a warning of the dangers of trying her patience. But she resisted the urge to follow that advice. This wasn't the good old days. Now she was in competition with 6 other jumped-up magicians who'd leap at the chance to tell prospective customers how unwelcoming she was. Instead, she forced her face into a smile as the merchant explained that the only things doors and keys had in common is that some of them had 4 corners. The city-state of Bearaith continues to seek diplomatic and economic ties with the Empire, among others. Overview. Before Meriv was conquered by the Empire, Bearaith was the stronghold of the Salt Lord Exsan and his supporters. As war spread through the territory, the population was swollen by the arrival of refugees, especially from wealthy Clisern. In a surprise move, Exsan declared independence from the Grendel and sued for peace with the Empire. He laid out a plan for his people that involved declaring the city, and the neighbouring region of Sinfiyard, as a neutral state. A free port where both Imperial and Grendel merchants would be welcome, without favouring either. Evidence suggests that his negotiations with his former peers have been successful, and then toward the end of 387 YE, he secured an offer of protection from the powerful Sarkofan Delves. The newly styled Exsan, Lord of Sand, rules from the city. They work to mould the place into a free port, where traders from everywhere are welcome, provided they bring money or goods to trade. As discussed in the A Wild Night and a New Road Wind of Fortune, Bearaith has come under the protection of the Sarkofan Delves, something that has not sat entirely easily with their imperial neighbours. How much influence the Sarkofan have is unclear, but it implies that anyone attacking Bearaith, imperial or otherwise, will incur the wrath of the Delves, their warships, and their economic sanctions. Bearaith. Status: foreigner. Ports: currently none. Ambassador: Melchior of Balthazar's Vineyard of Highguard. The ongoing battle over the territory has seen the independent citizens of the city stay securely behind their walls, keen to avoid being caught up in the fighting. The best interest probably lies in the territory being split evenly between the Salt Lords and the Unshackled, so that neither side has dominion. But that outcome seems very unlikely indeed. Today, Bearaith enjoys a precarious position between 2 powerful, warlike nations. Its survival depends on persuading both the Empire and the Broken Shore of its usefulness, as well as retaining the patronage of the Delves. A difficult balancing act, where one misstep could see the city sacked and its people put to the sword, enslaved, or driven into the sea. Welcome, Ambassador. Last season, Exsan presented plans for a consulate in Bearaith for use by the Imperial Consul. In a move that initially surprised the Lord of Sand, the Senate did not commission the consulate, but instead created a new ambassador to Bearaith to replace the consul. The Senate motion apparently explicitly stated that no embassy would be built. At first a little nonplussed, Exsan is apparently pleased by the decision. There's no requirement for Bearaith to build an expensive embassy in the city, and no need for a staff of Imperial civil servants to establish themselves in the neutral territory. Instead, all he needs to do is select one of his advisors to serve as ambassador to the Empire. With that in mind, the Lord of Sand is pleased to present Rupert Cultrin to Ambassador Melchior. Rupert is one of Exen's many relatives, a great-nephew as near as the civil service can tell. They have investments across the city, having initially made their money in the salt trade, but now having mostly divested their interests and focused on using money to make money. They are reportedly keen to get started and look forward to meeting Ambassador Melchior at some point in the near future. Under normal circumstances, an ambassador without an embassy has problems being taken seriously by a foreign nation, especially given the relative prestige of other ambassadors and the imperial consul. In this case, however, Bearaid sees a dedicated ambassador as a sign of respect. They are being taken as seriously as the Iron Confederacy, the Commonwealth, or, crucially, the Grendel. What may be more important are the financial and political benefits. No embassy for the Empire in Bearaid means Exen needs to spend less money building equivalent facilities, a cost he can ill afford. Most importantly of all, it reduces the risk of compromising the city-state's neutrality. With no embassy built, the Grendel can't accuse Exen of siding with the Empire. The civil service note that the only downside to this situation is that without an ambassadorial staff in Bearaid, their ability to advise on the factions and politics of the city-state is greatly reduced. Likewise, the ambassador to Bearaid is not able to direct their staff to send messages to Bearaid. They will have to compose and send their winged messengers during a summit to ensure they reach their counterpart in time. Prosperity. Last season, the Bearaidi set out several opportunities for the Empire, along with a diplomatic delegation to the Imperial Orcs. These included confirmation that the offer to sell land for the construction of a Temple of the Way was still available. According to Ambassador Melchior, the Unshackled are interested in purchasing the land for 25 thrones, provided the shrine is in keeping with the Unshackled understanding of the Way. Ambassador Rupert is happy to accept more for the land than was asked, but points out that the style of the temple is entirely in control of whichever imperial citizen is actually building it. That said, they also point out that many Bearaidi are still a little new to the idea of dealing with humans as their equals. The ideal situation would be for an Imperial Orc senator, the Legion engineer, or an Orc citizen from any nation who was bearer of an Imperial Wayleave, to commission whichever version of the shrine, the temple or the basilica, they settled on. In this case, traders and merchants keen to curry favour with the Empire would fall over themselves to be seen as supporting the project. Rupert confidently predicts the labour costs of either project would be halved if an Orc commissioned it. The civil service further note that there are several League titles with the ability to commission a sinecure. If the seat holder were a League Orc, this discount would also be available. This approach reinvigorates the opportunities presented in Summer 387YE. They remain available until the end of the Winter Solstice 388YE, as long as nothing changes. The second opportunity discussed was a chance for Imperial investment in the docks, which would offer prosperity to both Bearaid and its larger neighbour. Ambassador Rupert is nonplussed when Melchior of Balthazar's Vineyard seems to suggest that the Empire is keen to support Bearaid as an independent port of free trade where people might meet on neutral ground. Bearaid is already working towards that laudable goal, and the dock investment was a way for the Empire to become involved. Fortunately, the opportunity is still available, and remains so, until the end of the autumn equinox 388YE. Salt and beef. One of the problems Bearaid has is that there is a dearth of arable land in arid northwestern Mariv. Now that the children of Rex appear to be on the way out, there will be opportunities to fish the waters of the Bay of Katazar again, but that comes with its own challenges for a city that traditionally relied more on trade than industry to feed its populace. As a consequence, the discussion at the winter solstice of establishing a salt for beef exchange between the city-state and the Unshackled has been enthusiastically received. In a straightforward arrangement, Rupert proposes that the Unshackled build a trading post on the border between Sinfayard and either Ieradel or Icarian. Bearaid will do the same on the opposite side of the border. The intention is that the Imperial Orcs will be able to buy salt and even some ores from trade passing through the town of Eichnayad, while the Bearaidi will be able to purchase salt beef, tallow, and other cattle-based product from the shepherd of the southern herd. This would increase the already substantial income of the shepherd by 10 crowns each season. In addition, access to salt in significant quantities would also benefit the great herd in faraway Scarsind. Salt travels and keeps much better than raw meat after all. The shepherd of the great herd would see their rewards from their bounteous herd increase by 5 crowns each season. Obviously, these benefits would be lost if the trade between Bear Wraith and the Unshackled were disrupted in some fashion. Diamond Drakes. The ongoing strife between the Diamond Drakes following their visit to Anvil during the summer solstice has by all accounts been resolved. The Bear Wraithy gladiators who came to Anvil to resolve the matter at the spring equinox are satisfied with the outcome. They were honoured by an opportunity to participate in a pit fight. Although pit fighters take a more spiritual approach to the intense emotions of this kind of battle, they are not that different to the gladiators of Bear Wraith, some of whom also seek communion with their ancestors in the violence of the Colosseum. However, the opportunity for Imperial citizens to invest in Bear Wraith's Colosseum cannot help but have been tainted by the conflict. If it were up to Ehsan alone, he would welcome warbands of Imperial citizens to visit the city and fight in the arena. It would be good for the city and firm up relations with the Empire. Unfortunately, it is not just his decision that matters here. For the time being, while individual Imperial citizens can venture to Bear Wraith in the hopes of engaging in gladiatorial combat, there will be no formal invitation made. One Unshackled civil servant jokingly suggests that the obvious thing to do is to commission an appraisal into how the Empire could get the most out of the Bear Wraith Colosseum, and maybe send Mladen Eskovich next time he comes out of retirement. Humorous as this might be, however, there's no reason such an appraisal couldn't be commissioned by the Senate if they wish to explore further opportunities here. Up in the Peaks, also as discussed during their visit to the Empire, there is interest in the Empire providing an introduction to the Skorans to the east of Meriv. Not only are they looking for trade opportunities, but they have apparently been advised that before any decisions about Bear Wraithy access to the Grand Aqueduct of Eredel can be made, the Skorans would need to agree. The folk of the mountains have no reason to respond favourably to communication from folk they likely cannot tell apart from Grendel, but Imperial intercession would go a long way towards smoothing the path to diplomacy and trade. The easiest way to do this would be for a Senate motion to instruct the civil service accordingly. The Lord of Sand offers to reciprocate in kind. If the Senate agrees to facilitate such contact during the spring equinox, he will use his influence with the Grendel to arrange a chance for the Imperial Consul to meet with the representatives of the Brine Turtles Sept, including at least one of their respected warriors, someone associated with the Brine Turtle army. This meeting would take place on neutral ground during the summer solstice, and present an opportunity to reach a resolution to problems in Meriv surrounding the Sept. In the event that the Empire is able to arrange its own meeting, Rupert believes that if Bear Wraith throws its support behind such negotiations, they will be able to work with both sides to improve the chances of an equitable outcome. Obviously, this will require Ehsan to burn some of his favours with his former colleagues among the Grendel, which is why the price is that the Empire provide political support to Bear Wraith. The civil service cautioned that it is likely that if Bear Wraith secures trade links with Skora, the Sarkvan Delves will also be in a position to take advantage of that trade. The Delves have access to significantly more resource than Bear Wraith does, and it is not impossible that if they open favourable diplomatic channels with the Skorans, it might impact potential imperial trade with that nation, spies and agents. There is one other matter Ehsan wishes to clarify that he thinks is leading to some misunderstanding. To survive, Bear Wraith must remain neutral. There have been suggestions that the people of Bear Wraith could provide information on Grendel military strength, magical capabilities, or political positions in return for concessions from the Empire. Doing so would have serious consequences for the city-state. When the Grendel found out, it would be impossible to maintain Bear Wraith's neutrality. Worse, the Empire would have to suspect that they are selling Imperial secrets to the Grendel. It is simply easier to maintain an independent position by not supporting either side in this way. Unless the situation changes dramatically, future efforts to get Bear Wraith to provide information on either the Grendel or the Empire will be ignored. There is some question about how Bear Wraith would feel about Imperial spies operating in the city. Ehsan turns coy at this point, refusing to be drawn, and saying only that it would depend on who they were spying on and how prepared they were to be spied on in turn. Thunder on the beaches. The situation in Meriv is volatile. While Ehsan's offer to arrange a meeting with the Brine Turtles is made in good faith, it is entirely possible that matters beyond his control will make it irrelevant. Not everyone in Meriv is looking for any sort of negotiation with the Sept of Fleasath. Some see the presence of the avowedly barbarian orcs there as an opportunity. Specifically, a number of Reavers are eager to deal with the Brine Turtles in a more direct fashion. The Empire offered the hand of friendship to the Sept. even going so far as to outlaw the hunting of turtles in an attempt to curry favour with them. The second the Grendel returned, the brine turtles made it clear where their loyalties actually lie. The Empress rightly, in the view of the Reavers at least, declared war on them immediately. While battle rages back and forth through southern Mayreave, these Reavers say it is time to give these turncoats what they deserve. A vocal supporter of this Reaver coalition named Warlord Bick has moved his legion to Icarion and intends to use his camp to help coordinate Imperial efforts to raid the brine turtles and take everything of value they have. Before he is prepared to take action, however, he asks for the support of his fellow Unshackled, and especially the approval of the Imperial Orcs National Assembly. If this mandate is enacted, it will create 2 related ventures that would become available to Imperial Orc Reavers following the spring equinox. Warlord Bick is aware that there are probably not enough Reavers to do as much damage as he might like, and as such he is more than happy to welcome warlords from other nations, provided they have some experience reaving. If the mandate passes, he will open his camp as a staging ground to similar groups in other nations. Both ventures will also be available to Varushkan Wagon Raiders, Wintermark Maggots, and Freeborn Corsairs, all of whom Warlock Bick recognises as experts in pillaging Imperial enemies. One thing that is absolutely clear: this raid will not have the same effect that an army attacking the Sept would have. The explicit threat presented by an army, and the reputation that would spread as a result of it, are different to a simple raid. Internal arguments. There is some disagreement in the wake of Bick's proposal about exactly how to proceed. The Warlord himself has asked Reavers to focus on the brine turtle supply lines, the better to ensure that the raid does the maximum damage to the enemy. But the Sanite Reaver Pill, however, claims they remember the brine turtles from when they lived in Bearwraith, and says they were always self-important and smug about their good relations with the proper Grendel. Pill's opinion is that everyone should focus on maximising the loot taken, so that the brine turtles are encouraged to flee the territory, to hide behind their Grendel friends, so that the Empire doesn't have to deal with them in the long term. Bonesetter Gould of the Ethengor, on the other hand, argues that, at some point, the brine turtles will be subject of the Empire. It's probably counterproductive to raid them now. It might be satisfying or even expedient, but they believe it will store up trouble in the long run. The brine turtles are likely to be angry if their supply lines are cut, and they'll be furious if their wealth is plundered. The virtue of retribution is an important part of Grendel culture. Their religion encourages them to exact vengeance on those who wrong them. Warlord Bick, Bonesetter Gould, and Reaver Pill intend to travel to Anvil to further discuss what should be done, and are expected to arrive at 4 in the afternoon on Saturday, at the Unshackled camp, to discuss the matter with the National Assembly. Warlord Bick in particular hopes some interested representatives of the Winterfolk, Freeborn, and Varushkan Reavers will come along as well, to put their viewpoints forward. Ventures in Flysarth. Both opportunities resulting from the mandate are raiding actions, aimed at the brine turtle's sept, and those engaged in either venture will benefit from ritual enchantments that boost raiding. While an alternative mandate is possible, it won't be possible to gain access to one of the raid opportunities, but not the other. Military precision. The first available venture would be to interdict the brine turtle supplies. The raid actively targets key brine turtle supply lines, mostly food and baggage trains, stockpiles of resources intended for use by the army and the like. There is comparatively little loot to be gained here. Most of it is either too heavy to carry off, or profoundly mundane in nature. A standard military unit will receive 50 rings, representing the value of what they have carried off. Upgraded or enchanted military units will receive proportionately more. Destroying the supplies, however, will cause maximum disruption. This would directly damage the brine turtle army. For every 1,000 points of total strength supporting the action, the brine turtle army will be unable to benefit from natural resupply for a season, to a maximum of 1 year, starting with the downtime following the spring equinox. Loot and plunder. The other venture would plunder the brine turtle's land. Rather than focusing on cutting the army supply lines, Reavers taking this action instead aim for the richest pickings. The brine turtle sept is wealthy, enjoying a prestigious position in the territory, prospering under the Grendel rule of Mayreave. This won't have any effect on the brine turtle army, but it provides significantly more plunder for the Reavers who take part. A standard military unit will receive 100 rings, 5 random resources, and at least 1 Grendel luxury. Upgraded or enchanted military units will receive proportionately more. The main effect of this objective is to harass the brine turtles to the point that they have no choice but to abandon their lands, at least in the short term. If a total strength of 4,000 or more support this option, many of the brine turtle sept will withdraw from Flaysarth, heading south for safer lands under the protection of the Grendel.